there are enough laws on the books by Congress that are very clear in terms of how we have to enforce our immigration system, that for me to simply, through executive order, ignore those congressional mandates would not conform with my appropriate role as president.
Well, that seemed pretty clear. President Obama back in 2011 and a number of times since saying he lacks the authority to take executive action to defer deportations for millions of people in this country illegally, a step he now plans to take perhaps as early as this week. And it's time now for our Sunday group. Britt Hume, Fox News senior political analyst, Jackie Kucinich of The Washington Post, syndicated columnist George Will, and Fox News political analyst Juan Williams. Well, we asked you for questions for the panel, and we got this on Twitter from Jim Dixon, who writes, send him, the president, a budget that defunds immigration and ACA, the Affordable Care Act, make him shut down the government with his veto. Britt, how do you answer Jim? If Republicans somehow tie funding of the government to opposition to this executive action, is it a smart political move or another mistake?
It's a total blunder to try that, because if the president were to veto the bill, a bill that would keep the government going, and there was a shutdown, it wouldn't matter. It never has what the proximate cause of the shutdown was. It is an iron rule in Washington, exemplified many times, that if the government shuts down, the Republicans get the blame. Not some of the blame, not most of the blame, all of the blame. And one would surmise that they may have learned that by now. Their leaders seem to have, but there are some within the House and Senate who still think that that kind of a brinkmanship might work. I doubt it.
Jackie, are Democrats fully on board with this idea of executive action, despite all of the threats, all the promises that it's going to poison the well? Do they just feel it's going to solidify even more the Hispanic voter support for the Democratic Party, and, to get back to the other point, that it may provoke Republicans to overreact?
I don't think a lot of Democrats held a lot of hope that because Republicans took over the Senate, that all of a sudden there was going to be a lot getting done in Congress. I don't think that was out there. From what I've heard, Democrats are solidly behind the president when it comes to this. They've been pushing the president to exert his authority. A lot of them have, particularly the Hispanic members, because they want to see something get done on this issue.
So do they see no downside to creating this kind of confrontation on this issue?
I don't know that this confrontation wouldn't have happened anyway. Remember when Boehner tried to release just the principles that House Republicans had for immigration reform? I think in January of last year, by February, he had already pulled back. So there wasn't a lot of hope out there anyway.
You know, presidents have taken plenty of executive actions in the past, all the way back to Abraham Lincoln with the Emancipation Proclamation, Harry Truman desegregating the military in the 40s. George, which Barack Obama is right? The one in 2011 who we just saw, who said that this does not, let me get the quote right, would not conform with my appropriate role as president, or the new Barack Obama that we've heard of in the last few months, who says, I can do it and I'm going to do it?
Well, I side with the Barack Obama of 2011 and even more the Barack Obama of 2008, who was astringent and correct in his criticism of the Bush-Cheney expansive views of executive power. The policies that reportedly the president is planning to implement are those about which intelligent people of goodwill can agree or disagree. He's going to shield from deportation millions of people who actually face no realistic prospect of deportation. He's going to give work permits to millions of people who are already working, most of them. I'm not saying it's trivial, but it's put this in context. And he's going to direct, in the enforcement discretion, the agents to concentrate on A, criminals, and B, people who arrived recently. Fine. The policies are defensible. The process is execrable, beyond the legalities and beyond the precedents of executive discretion and beyond the constitutional questions. There's a simple etiquette of democracy, particularly after we have had, as Tom Cotton said here, an election in which this issue featured in many states, and the results were clear. The country opposes what the president is doing.
But what about the argument the president would make? You talk about the etiquette of democracy. It passed the Senate in 2013. It's been sitting there for a year and a half in the House, and they've done nothing about it.
That's too bad. We have a bicameral legislature. The Constitution says that they have to agree. And in fact, 300 and some bills passed the House and sat in the Senate.
I want to get back to this question, though, about how much executive action is too much. How much executive action does the president actually have? This weekend, the Wall Street Journal had a very interesting article which asked the question, how many is too many? And their argument is that when the president decides to take executive action that affects individuals or small groups of people, that's clearly within his right. But in this case, where he would be taking executive action that would affect 5, 6 million people, that goes too far. Juan?
I don't think that's really the question is, you know, how many is too many by that calculus, and I don't think that's the issue here. I think that the issue here is he does not have the right to rewrite the law. I mean, the law and the Congress have the right to set the terms for granting citizenship, number of visas, terms for green cards, for example. That's what the Congress has the right to do and what they should be doing. And in the clip that you played, I think he's saying he would prefer to have the Congress act.
Well, of course he would.
And of course, I think that's what.
But the question is, can he do it on his own?
But of course he can do it on his own. As you said, this is something that presidents have done for time immemorial.
I didn't say he could do it on his own.
No, you said going back to the Emancipation Proclamation.
I say people can take executive action.
So he has legal authority, and I would argue, picking up on what George Will just said, that he has moral imperative because we're dealing with tearing families apart, and it's as if we're just talking politics and law. There are real human beings out there
These people
who
aren't
are
being
damaged.
deported anyway. What are you talking about?
What are you talking about? There are huge numbers. We are at record numbers of deportations in this country.
The reason these numbers on deportation look so large is that the administration counts as a deportation people who come and are turned away at the border, who never really get into the interior of the United States.
They are large without those numbers.
And what I would add is that the authority that you're talking about is prosecutorial discretion, which stems from the fact that the government doesn't have the resources to prosecute every lawbreaker. Correct. So therefore prosecutors have discretion as to which cases to prosecute. What we're talking about here is a mass refusal to deport people who probably wouldn't be deported anyway.
No.
But that's what this
I think a different way to look at it is administrative relief. The president's job is to manage, hang on, the president's job is to manage the immigration law as passed by the Congress. You can't deport all these people. So what the president is doing is prioritizing, as George said, who is to be the focus of deportation efforts. And criminals are the people, not families.
Well, as a practical matter, Republicans would be wise to keep an eye on how much actual difference it would make if he were to do this. But as a legal matter, it seems evident that prosecutorial discretion is exercised where you simply don't have the ability to prosecute everybody. In this case, this is such a wholesale refusal to follow the law that I think it would probably exceed constitutional bounds if you could ever get a judge to hear it, which is where the problem is.
All right, we have to take a break here.